Nostalgia, a big word that holds a portrait of conflicting emotions. It's the melancholy feeling you get being homesick, combined with the joy of reminiscing with your friends. The only time machine we have in this life, and for better or worse, why media has become saturated in it. If you scroll on any social media platform where you hear or read someone talking about the state of films, without fail, the biggest complaint is, we're tired of reboots and sequels. Can't we get something original? And yeah, I'm down with that. Except when I look at the highest grossing films of last year, I see a bit of a disconnect. Some announcements of these projects are met with excitement, while others, the sheer mention of continuing a story is met with groans of people asking, why? But in my humble opinion, I think this dance really comes down to the details. Is this a story worth continuing? A universe worth exploring more of? How good was the original material? And will the people who made it what we love be back? Reboots can be tricky. They have to share a similar energy and tone to the original to be worthy of its association, while updating the material to fit more in a modern lens. Sequels, particularly with big time gaps, are tasked with giving us characters that feel like the same people, but who have evolved over time. In a way, they've been living their lives off-screen all these years, but are still old friends we're familiar with, and a reason that feels genuine enough to disrupt their peace. There are good examples and bad, but if you ask me, the best is what was done with the Best Man franchise. If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume you've at least seen the first two, so this isn't to rehash them. What I'm going to do is center the element that has allowed this story to thrive in ways most have failed: its characters.
A long time ago, Mia slept with your best man.
Harper, the very first character we meet, and funny enough, who I have the least to say about. He's dating ROBYN and recently published his first book, Unfinished Business, based on his college friend group. He's a 1 foot in, 1 foot out type of guy, always looking for bigger and better. A judgmental, self-centered workaholic that has a tendency to play with fire when it comes to his relationships. Something that remains consistent in both films. But by the time we catch back up with him in the series, that's a bad habit. With the passing of Mia, he's resolved. Hollywood wants to make his first book into a movie, and he takes the time, this time, to get the approval of his friends. While that lesson has been learned, the chickens have come home to roost for his marriage. Harper has always been a practical person. That is a trait very core to him. It shows up in his friendship with Lance through their different beliefs of faith, but in a way it actually complements their dynamic. Lance offers Harper moments to see outside of himself, while Harper has a way of grounding Lance to the realities of a situation. Funny enough, this, along with a whole bunch of unspoken baggage, is what resulted in Harper's divorce.
I know you feel like shit now, but I'm not gonna lie to you. You compromised yourself, our relationship, and Lance and Mia's.
ROBYN plays the role of supportive girlfriend in the first film, and Sanaa does it well. She has the least amount of screen time, but her scenes, mixed with the information we learn about Harper, tell most of their story. She's a dreamer, moving through life in tune with her emotions, listening to her gut. It took a while to settle into her career as a caterer. She's easily influenced through how beautiful of a writer she finds Harper to be. At the end of the first film, he proposes, and as hesitant as we see her, his words, "live in the moment," is the key that gets her to accept. But being married to a man that exudes the energy of always looking for the next best thing has the power to shake any woman's confidence. What happens when you don't align on what best is? I'll tell you what, a divorce. Well, a blow-up first, then a divorce. ROBYN longs for a simpler life, a place that speaks to her soul. It's the root of her wanting to move to Ghana. Harper's version of a simpler life is the more money he can obtain, the more freedom he'll have to live life on his own terms, write whatever he wants, and be viewed highly by his peers. One is driven by the internal, the other external. And neither is written to be wrong, but more of a fundamental mismatch. This is a couple that from the very first film, we all knew was set up to fail. It was only a matter of time until ROBYN got sick of playing supportive girlfriend, making herself smaller to fit into Harper's world. It's an arc that felt inevitable, but also natural in its timing, and one of the many elements of the series that enriched its return.
But I have been drinking tequila shots. My hormones are raging out of control. I'm emotional, I'm horny, and I don't want to hear about no goddamn peace.
If you're just listening to what is said by the friend group, it would be easy to deduce Jordan down to the girl version of Harper. Both workaholics, always looking for what's next. But unlike Harper, Jordan's likable, at least when she's not trying to be Harper's side piece. She's a television producer with a type A personality that tends to use her powers for good. The Gretchen Wieners of the friend group.
Everybody's business. She knows everything about everyone.
That's why her hair is so big. It's full of secrets.
She's nosy, perceptive, and chooses to live her life intentionally. Surprises are not in her schedule, which is something the writers like to play with. In the first film, she puts herself out there to Harper, willing to step past their platonic boundary. Is it right? Of course not. But Jordan's default setting is playing by the rules. Even the second film, her being in an interracial relationship is dancing offbeat to what is expected of her. Jordan's arc in the series is built off of her finally learning true self-care. She opens herself up to different paths, while maintaining her integrity along the way. She has a pregnancy scare. She's relieved it's just that, a scare, but gives herself a moment to grieve a path she didn't plan. Something that would dropkick this control freak into a new journey. But she doesn't need a child to do that. She realizes she can make that choice on her own, leaving corporate America to invest in passion projects, and rejecting Harper's romantic advances, keeping herself in the driver's seat of her own life. Good girl. I've always wondered if Harper and Jordan would genuinely make a good match if explored. They're the what if that never moves past that question. I lean on the side of no, because even by the end of the series, I'm not convinced Harper has developed enough to be a solid partner, let alone one to a woman as accomplished as Jordan. What I admire about her story, though, is we've seen it before, but it's done thoughtfully, and again with patience. It feels earned, and as if her path is still moving. In the first film, she mentions how change is overrated, and she's the one character who from the outside looks to be in the same place, but is far from that internally. It's a final chapter for us as an audience, but a next one for her.
You know what? I'm flattered, right? But was I really that bad? Yeah, you were. Yeah, you're right. I can't deny it.
More than any other character, Lance's arc is centered around his relationships. His friendship with Harper, his marriage with Mia, and his relationship to his non-binary child, LJ. Lance is popular and charismatic. He's used to being perceived a certain way by others, which is why Mia catches his attention, but also probably why him and Harper became best friends. Lance is strong-willed in his religious beliefs and traditional gender roles. But when you look at his circle, he's surrounded by people who challenge him, directly or otherwise. Harper with his faith, MURCH with how he holds his own masculinity, and Q challenges everyone. It's his thing. We'll get to him. In the first film, Lance learns of Harper's betrayal and his challenge to give grace to Mia's actions. In the second, he's grappling with the reality of her cancer and being called on to truly forgive not only Harper but Mia. In the series, he's picking up the pieces of her passing and challenged to accept LJ's gender identity. Similar to Jordan, there's a patience to his arc that is necessary to feel authentic to a character we've known since the 90s. It's a natural evolution that was processed with age and hardships. Above all, we've seen Lance be stubborn, misogynistic, hot-headed. He's always been a good friend, and having friends so different from him is what allowed for a more healthy, balanced representation of masculinity by the end of the series.
What we shared was as sweet and as endearing as a forehead kiss.
Mia is such a fun subversion of the good girl trope. The archetype of a woman portrayed as passive, compliant, and focused on pleasing others rather than her own desires. Out of the friend circle, she's the last character we meet, built up in a way to almost sound as if she's an angel. When we do finally meet her, she's walking down a flight of stairs wearing all white as Harper, Lance, and Jordan stare. In a flashback, we see she was friends with Harper first, a kind-hearted virgin who could come off as easy prey to someone like Lance, except she subverts his expectations by seeming unimpressed, even giving him pointers of his skills on the field. He's able to woo her, but his cheating habits are not something she's ignorant to. Pushing the entire plot into motion, Mia sleeps with Harper, and never tells Lance about it. She spends the second film trying to leave her husband and friends in a good place before she passes. Shown to be the glue as each character in the circle gets a moment with her. Mia is proactive, speaks up for herself and desires, and is able to do so with ease through the way she knows she's perceived. She's smart and, funny enough, I'd argue more logical than her husband, who moves more on his emotions. While she's obviously not in the series, her presence is missed. As the viewer, you feel her loss in the way the characters do. In episode 6, there's a scene at the movie premiere based on Harper's book, where we watch the characters watch a scene of movie Mia, and it's a testament to the writing, performances, and Robert Townsend's direction that we're able to be right there with them in that moment, and miss Mia too.
Because if you didn't define yourself for yourself, you'd be crunched into other people's fantasies of you and eaten alive.
Julian, known as Murch, is a really interesting character because juxtaposed to Lance, he sits in a different corner of masculinity. We meet him picking up Harper from the airport. He's a professor who could be a big-time lawyer if he wanted to, but is more passionate in education. He's kind-hearted and sensitive to the point of being a doormat in his relationship, with a bad habit of appeasing others and not speaking up for himself, but he also doesn't allow his friends to dictate how he moves with women. When he dumps Shelby, it's not because his friends have been telling him to. It plays a part, sure, but he ends things after connecting with a stripper, who he ends up marrying and having children with. In the second film, when he finds the damning video of her, he's not affected by how his friends view it. I mean, his biggest mistake was running to confide in them in the first place instead of talking to her about it. But his real focus, the donors for his school, and how to bring this up to Candace. Murch loves hard, and not in a toxic way, but where his relationships take priority. A running gag is that he can't keep a secret. However, this trait is often shown through him revealing something in passing. He's not this untrustworthy gossip king, more a man who subconsciously doesn't see any information about his people shameful enough to keep it to the chest. In the series, Murch's arc is internal. He holds pride in how he shows up as a husband and father, but spends a lot of the final chapter questioning his worth amongst his friends. Humiliated by the portrayal in Harper's movie, Murch begins to explore his anger, an emotion he suppressed for a long time. Takes up boxing as a hobby, eventually inviting his friends to a match where he ends up winning. They're impressed and proud, but this is really something Murch needed to do for himself. Spending a lot of time focused on how his people perceived him when he needed to become more comfortable filling out all sides of Murch. Now let's talk about his wife.
I have moved on, and I am those girls' mother. And Julian, your wife, come to me first.
Hello, my name is Brittany, and I'm a Regina-holic. I wouldn't say Candace has much of an arc throughout the series, more so a consistent theme. We meet her as one of the strippers for Lance's bachelor party. Her and Murch connect over Audre Lorde, and in that moment, we're shown there's more to Candace than originally presented. If I didn't define myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. This is Candace's through line. And throughout, she's challenged with moments where she has to remind herself and others of this. In the second film, after everyone learns of her video and she whoops Shelby's ass, she explains to Murch where she was at in her life. That is her past, and she is still someone who deserves respect. In the final chapters, we see her struggling to write an acceptance speech, almost unsure if she even deserves to be honored. Later, after being assaulted by an acclaimed advisor who preyed on her, she's inspired to write a piece. In the final scenes, we see she, along with a group of women, shared their stories exposing him. She and ROBYN are close as they're both the outsiders to the college friend group. But what could have been a throwaway role, Regina Hall brings a lot of dimension to. Candace never allows others to define her. She defines herself. And by the close of the franchise, you've forgotten her introduction. A testament to the writing and performance. Now on to her arch nemesis.
I heard about your book, and I don't think it's cute, Harper. Listen, the next time you want to characterize me in one of your little projects, do me a favor.
What would that be, Shelby?
Don't.
I started the outline for this video thinking I'd give out superlatives, but scrapped it because I'm an Aquarius. Don't think too hard on that. If I did go through with it though, Shelby would have been awarded Most Improved. Not much of a character in the first film, as she only serves to be the conflict for MURCH to overcome. She's rude, demanding, and plays victim to get her way. It was interesting to see how they chose to develop her in the second film, mentioning her and Mia are line sisters. I mean, from the original, we know that she went to college with them, considering she's in Harper's book, but we never see her and Mia interact. She's not even a bridesmaid, and is just as antagonistic of a character in the sequel. But elements like this are gems when looking for chances to continue a story. In the final chapter, Shelby is still the character we know. Blunt, superficial, confrontational. But she also becomes a real person. Q brings out a softness in her, a vulnerability that was always there. But her fearlessness in a fight is what got her on that plane to crash his wedding in the first place. That fire never disappeared. The series just shows her able to use it for good. Her refusal to accept she's in premenopause is a refusal to accept change. She attaches that fire to her youth, learning separately and alongside her husband that it's a blessing to age for those who live a life of authenticity. All right. I do hear the elephant in the room, so I am going to address it very quickly. Shelby didn't tell Q he was her baby daddy until the baby was like 10 years old. And is that wrong? Sure. But there's a consistent through line that all of these characters are morally gray. You know, like real people. And also, if Q's not mad, neither am I.
You're gonna be alright, man.
How can you be so sure?
'Cause I'm cute, baby.
Saving the best for last, Q is the most honest character in the group, and one could argue his privilege allowed him to be. A man of many talents that bounced around pursuing different career paths. Villain of the group. Harper judges him for seeming unstable, while also resenting the fact he gets to play around so often with his creative talents. His mother passed away when he was young, but his father is wealthy, owning hotels, expecting his son to eventually join the family business. A wish that came true later on. Young Q's transparency is buried in a bed with cynicism, believing women cheat, lie, and steal just as much as men, so no point in being good anyway. As long as honesty is amongst his friends, that's all he needs. Harper wasn't being honest with Lance. Lance wasn't being honest in knowing Mia most likely stepped out. MURCH wasn't being honest in owning his wife's past. Q could look like a pot stirrer when he really challenges his people to be honest. For him, that's the only type of life worth living, one of authenticity. At the start of Final Chapter, it's why Harper is immediately put off. Q has stripped himself of the very thing that makes him who he is, and it's not until Shelby arrives that he remembers. Q brings out a softness in Shelby, but Shelby humbles Q. She is the one character who is able to challenge him the way he does everyone else. The series centers his arc being confronted with his father's health and his own. After a heart attack, lifestyle changes are expected, but he's not ready for them. He hears his father's voice telling him to never get old, but that's only made a reality through death. It's a lesson both Shelby and Q learn on their own, but concurrently. Similar to his wife, we still have the same blunt, perceptive, sarcastic character, but in an optimistic font. There was always a lightness to Terrence Howard's performance, but lightness in older age looks good on Q. He's developed this internal faith that if his people are good, he's good. Mia was the glue of the group, but Quentin is the spark. The Best Man franchise is sitting in a special class amongst these reboot sequel conversations, with a number of examples showing the original cast of a series or movie coming back to serve as nostalgic wallpaper to introduce a younger cast. But this franchise never succumbs to that. Each iteration still centers the same characters. They are never shifted to the side to focus elsewhere. As a millennial girly who at her big age still romanticizes New York City, I know, sue me. The quickest example that comes to mind of a franchise trying this and failing would be And Just Like That. A continuation of Sex and the City where we get to see what Carrie, Charlotte, and Miranda are all up to years past the movies. And it just doesn't work. Instead of feeling like an evolution, it feels like a regression, stagnation. Every now and then is a moment of familiarity, a peek through of the magic from the original, but it's so few and far between it places itself in a pile of projects fans only check in to see how bad it's gotten. The writing in The Best Man shines because there is an intention for every arc to be in service of its character. They're not throwing storylines at the wall and flipping a coin to see who they'll give it to. Managing to maintain a through line with 9 characters of different personalities, backgrounds, relationships to one another, this is something Malcolm D. Lee should be applauded for, as he's always provided a reason for us to come back, and surprisingly makes it worth it. He, along with everyone involved, have structured a full, living, breathing, beautiful story of this messy-ass friend group filled with flaws and forgiveness. In this social media age, it's become trendy to look back at some of our Black classic stories with doom and gloom, and nitpick the flaws of characters to throw them away in the name of toxicity. And don't get me wrong, there's a place for that. But I fell in love with film because I fell in love with stories. And I will always go up for this story building upon its last, taking the time to explore ideas honestly. To have long-term relationships of any kind, grace and forgiveness is a must. After Robyn and their daughter leave Harper, there's this quiet scene of Lance, MURCH, and Q all showing up to do nothing else but play cards as usual. I want to note, not everyone deserves a seat in your life, but some people, amongst all their flaws, get one, because they provide an intangible feeling you can't imagine living without. This franchise made an authentic space for different forms of Black masculinity, femininity, the evolution of self and community, with writing that grew with its characters. When you sit in the balance of having respect for who you're writing about and who you're writing for, while also offering stories that deepen our sense of understanding for them, that is when people open their arms to a tale continuing. Now, that's not to say all stories need to. I'm in the camp of sinners don't need a sequel, prequel, nothing. It was perfect as is, and I don't want it touched. But it all goes back to the dances and the details. Is this a story worth continuing? A universe worth exploring more of? How good was the original material? And will the people who made it what we love be back?